Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What's going on, Internet? Eric Van Holtz here, back again with another e-commerce conversation. Hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the table, from me, it's my friend Arden with That Shirt Was Cash.
Yes, sir. Hey, how's it going?
What's up, man?
Good to see you, man.
I'm super stoked for this. Every time I meet with you, I walk away learning 10 or 20 things that I had never comprehended in my whole life.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's a blessing and a curse. I try and hold multiple perspectives. I'm like a perspective collector. And so at the end of the day, picking which perspectives suit me best, let alone advice to give other people, has always really been a challenge. But really, I just kind of see my role as broadening people's perspectives.
Yeah. The last time we met, you introduced me to a word, zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And maybe I had run across it or seen it before, but I'd never really kind of absorbed it. And then after you kind of talked about it, I've been using it all over the place. I'm just you got to kind of tap into this intangible aspect of society. And that's where kind of the magic happens, specifically from a marketing perspective. But from your perspective and your product, that's almost the life you live, right?
Totally. And what's first amazing about just language itself is language puts to words these concepts that are intangible and exist outside. So, the more that we understand language, the more words that we have to describe the moments that we're in, the businesses that we have, the people that we're around. Language itself carries a lot of the power for us to see clearly. I am largely known for being a heavy, internet culture proponent from the start.
Yeah, you're a meme lord, right?
At one point, I was a meme lord. I would say sort of edgelord. I grew up when...
What's an edgelord?
Demographically, it's mostly millennials that came up and were too sheltered. So they had a lot of angst to show on the internet when that allowed them to do that. So I feel a lot of that is just kind of working through people's issues that lead them to be edgy. So
okay.
Edgy is what can I do to trigger someone or be controversial? For me, it kind of still is that. I'm definitely not an edgelord by any sense of the word at this point, but I am always testing what are the limits of my personal life, what defines me, what is the limit of society right now. And that within our community is an ongoing question because we actually don't even have edgy clothes or anything anymore. And
we do if we go to your website, right?
Honestly, not really. So we used to have a bravery section, and that was just $1 discount for wearing something that took some bravery. But especially in this day and age, I just find just wearing things that are outside the box itself, wearing things that progress who you are, and you learn something about your place in the world, putting something on that's uncomfortable, that can come in many forms. So the actual essence of what I started with really never went away as much as the scope of, what is someone's comfortable zone and pressing up against that through apparel. I just handed you men's velvet joggers.
Yeah, well, for those who cannot see Arden, which is 100% of you guys, he is wearing a velveteen tank with, very appropriately, a podcast guest of Elon Musk when he was smoking that doobie. And he's got an ayahuasca root necklace. But, you wear this stuff all the time, right?
Yeah, I do. This one holds some additional value. The design here itself, it's Ross Baines. And this picture was hanging in Joe Rogan's green room until he moved to Austin, at least. I don't know where it is now. But yeah, it's definitely a cool piece. I just like the statement that it kind of makes, especially with the velvet. There's something.
Yeah, there's like texture to it. It's kind of, it almost looks like metallic from my perspective.
Yeah. And then on the inside, it's actually super soft. So it just kind of works. I definitely go for comfort. So I'm practical in the sense of comfort first, because you can't really be yourself. You can't be yourself if you're not comfortable, right?
Yeah.
And there's places to be uncomfortable. I always exist in what is the most uncomfortable place that I can manage, just because it's like, I started this in my 20s. I'm 33 right now. I find, it's common knowledge that 30s is kind of your creative like epic to really come up with original ideas and flex in that manner. Then you have your 40s to really, acquire more assets. And so that's kind of the path as I view it.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about Elon because I feel like Elon is one of these guys who pushes the comfort level. And I don't know if it's comfort level for him or not, but you don't see a lot of CEOs, calling people pedophiles in Thailand or whatever. Like, he doesn't have a filter. And I know a lot of CEOs don't have a filter, but they're not, I would say, dumb enough to put it on social media, or like they keep it behind closed doors. He's just, I feel like what you see on social media is probably, to a certain degree, who he just is.
It definitely seems that way. I think to do so many things that are as controversial as he has, it's very calculated. So I try and stay aware of how much am I opening myself to get played by a sort of like ex-Silicon Valley demagogue of sorts. So I don't prescribe to any sort of demagogues in life, but I do appreciate the expression of freedom and spirit that he exists. And, he's really at the crossroads of how much individualism will pull us through these times or not. Like, what's the answer? Because, he's such a better example. I think he carries such a more inspiring spirit than like Jeff Bezos, which, a lot in this crowd, we all have a lot of experience with Jeff. And I look up to him too. Like, I think a lot of these people have done really incredible things. The question just comes back towards which aspects of their ethos really ring true for me so that I can test that and I can embody that, but I don't become someone who's trying to replicate them and be them.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I don't think anyone can. And part of the journey is like finding yourself. I think, the direction we're going with this conversation is really interesting to me because I've become more active tweeting over the years, and I have a lot of thoughts in my mind that end up don't making it to the world simply because, like I have concerns of how it'll appear or losing customers, or, I tend to be a contrarian by nature. I see the world a little bit different, or maybe oppositional defiant. I feel like that's how I bring value to the world, but also like, is there going to be something that, like cancels me? Or, if I truly like speak out on the things that I believe,
So I'm taking the path where I increasingly try not care. So when I first started, I did not care, but that was because I was too ignorant to know any better. And then the world and the internet and just like the pitchforks and everything really, takes a psychological, spiritual toll on you. And so I spent many years really diving into spirituality. I have a lot of various practices in my own life that I carry through that really keep me in touch with who I am and deeply connected just with this world and the moment that we have here. And I think that's generally what I prioritize. But to go into where you're going, I think that's a lot of people's issue right now is, I want to speak up in some way. I want to express myself in these directions because this is part of me and this is a creative pursuit or response to the world that I do have. And with someone that has a following already, I think you're in a perfect position to create your Uber audience, like your super fan group that you really segment out. So when I look at my emails, there's probably like 4,000 to 6,000 of them that have been with us and they still open our emails, like every email for 5 years, or what I looked to was like 4+ or 5+. And so that's my group that I can really say what I want. I test a lot of things. I've been playing with these RFID chips. We did the first NFT auction on Shopify. The people who bought those NFTs, which were pieces of art with artists that we work with, those were our super fans. So they weren't even crypto people. They weren't anything like that. So paying special attention to the people that support us is so key. And what's great is when you do show focus in that way, for me, it's mostly writing and like our Discord, but increasingly just writing. I like writing. The pieces that do well with them then work for a broader audience. And I'll start to incorporate in my more general like messaging and talking points.
Yeah, I think my challenge for me is, like a lot of people really identify with the Beard brand core values, freedom, hunger, and trust, which, are rooted in my core beliefs, but they may not make that leap, of celebrating the individual. And I love the individual so much that I'm like anti, like government, anti, any kind of, not anti-community, but just like individual-based community.
So the direction that I went with that is, so we've actually been a form-based company from day one. That's how I've always picked our designs. The people will answer every question you throw at them. And it's almost like hilarious just because where a lot of companies are going to be too afraid to like get personal with their audience or even like sending them a forum that has humanity behind its approach and its questions. My experience is that people love it. And it's really been one of the secret factors of why I've been able to even exist for 7 years doing this. And I still send forms. So the form can really ask the questions that matter most to them. And I find that, we talk about it a lot in e-commerce, but we also make a lot of assumptions, and the assumptions are almost, at least for me, so this is kind of why I even question my own contrarian nature in general, is because like, when am I right? When am I wrong? Not that I don't make decisions, you still have to, but like, what are your dreams? Like, what issues are you facing right now? Like very direct personal questions to create the scope of what they're trying to accomplish. Who's your arch nemesis? Who's your best friend? And people tell me it's Chase, and he's, I've known him since second grade, and they'll tell me their stories. And in those stories, I find the best things to write about. Honestly, I find the actual substance of what people want. And so I actually had your same problem, is like I was trying to create this community of individualists. It's like quicksand falling between your fingers, because an individualist,
they don't really go hand in hand
don't
together.
Get into the community, but they're there, but they don't keep the community core. So, when you actually start poking under the surface, you start, at least for me, the common theme was confidence. It was people really not wanting to be left behind in life. So that's another like stem of questions is, what do you fear? Just directly, and seeing what people say.
So you're like going all psychology on your clients.
Yeah. So I've created archetypes where it's like the Joker, the everyman, and I characterize them. And, I'll just ask like, which of these do you resonate most with? So I can kind of see which archetype my audience kind of falls in. And
will you have questions like based on the path they go? Do you split it up, or is it more just that's a single question that you kind of get data on?
For those, I haven't taken the additional step to have it change the questions based on their answers. I mean, that's something I would love to do. It just is always coming to like 80-20 timing. And really, when you ask such interesting questions, or when you approach a group, so like earlier this week, I just text every repeat buyer that was on our text message list that we were collecting, like in quotes, shirt was cash. So, hey, I'm collecting pictures and stories from people. So it's actually last week. So if you wear our clothes this weekend, send me pictures to this number. And it wasn't our text system. It's a Google Voice text number. So then, you could still delegate something like this. I always start doing it, but then I have like, probably like 20, 25 threads with people that I've just been texting over the last week back and forth, and then you can ask more questions that are on your mind. But just really in general, going that extra step for that small segment that you do have, I think is the thing that brings most of the energy into the brand, into the people that want to talk about your brand and that show up for you.
Yeah. Is that something you're doing on a monthly basis or quarterly basis?
No, that's a first foray, honestly. So I actually also put the text message on our website. So I'm testing that for response to see. And so far, it's just people who are listening right now trying to sell me stuff. Like yesterday, I got a text. Are you doing text marketing? Like, you just texted me. But that direct text, so it's always a risk. And I mean, I got probably 10% of the people that I first tested with that, not even including the ones that texted directly to that. So they didn't read the instructions, which there were more people when I logged into the app. But 10% of the people that I sent that text to, not trying to sell them anything, just saying what's up, ask for stories and pictures. 10% of those people texted my Google Voice number. So I like statistics like that. Like, I feel like those sort of relationships, whenever I see our brand mentioned online, like there's always someone that I've had that sort of moment with in some way that pops up in the comments. And that's just probably one of my favorite parts. So I'm always trying to like think of ways, how do I go deeper?
Yeah.
And just kind of like going back to where this started is just really knowing what your audience, where they're at in life. Like, we really approach it in a lot of the wrong ways, I feel like, just based on what I hear, or you'll hear in podcasts like, your audience research is so important, but it's agencies doing it. So they don't have any clue. Truly, they want to. I think they're good players. You know, they want to do a good job.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, I have to know, and it really took me this long to really get to the point where it was like, my audience is this type of person. It's like an introvert that I'm trying to get to wear cool clothes. So maybe they're not like the most individual that I had the same approach as you. So I don't know what that says about us, but trying to collect individuals. But what it really came down to is the people who respond well and have been around for a long time. I really want to get to know them. And at the end of the day, like, I have the same issues that they do through my own life. And then I can journal and end up writing the email that just gets like this massive response, which is what I'm always like really trying to shoot for.
It's amazing that as a founder, when you really take the time to get to know your most loyal fans and customers, how remarkable they are. Like, just the accomplishments they have had, the things they've done, the stories they have to tell, you know, and I feel like so much of today's marketing strategy, you know, never even thinks about that. It's like, get to know your customers, like legit, like get to know them. Like, can you name any of your customers? Like, by their name? Like, that's a totem for any founder out there. It's like, who are some of your customers? Not counting your mom, you know, and what are they like? What are their lives like? Where do they live? What do they do? And if you can't even give me one of the names of your customers, like, how connected are you to your customer base?
And it's kind of interesting because we live on the internet. So our Discord community, I started that like 5 years ago. And it's typically like the same usernames coming through that. So there's also this aspect of username. The relationship transcends the brand. And so having the balance between, this is almost like the creator's dilemma. And I find myself always moving towards the creative or the creator side of things. So I have to spend most of my week just really drilling in the e-commerce as it stands and really like looking at our funnels and things like that, because the creative stuff and the relationship, that's all I would spend my time on. And I have done that. And that too, only spending your time in that direction, unless you have a super stable source to do that, like podcasts, but particularly YouTube. In this day and age right now, as it is, you do need to make sure that you have balance between where you're professionally focused. And it kind of seems like you fall into the same position where, left to your own devices, would you be a creative? Like, would you be an artist if it wasn't?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, like going back to my college days and creative, maybe not in like a traditional like artist sense, but like I'm a builder. I do have to create, I have to build. And I remember like I would create forums back in the day, gamers forums. I don't know if you remember those or not, but I had one of those and tried to build that up. And I would build like a clan, right? I wanted to have my own little clan. I didn't want to join a clan. I wanted to create my own.
Yep, same.
And then I just realized like you get to name it whatever. It's like when you're a gamer and you see all these clans out there, you just assume there's some kind of like official governing body, or at least I did, like as a product of public schools. I'm like, oh, this is some kind of official thing. And then you realize it's just, a bunch of people getting together and who like each other and they wear the same tag. And, obviously 2021 is a lot different than 1999 when it comes to the world of gaming. But I don't know where I'm rambling on that. I have to build. I have to build something.
Yeah. And I find that it's an aspect of the industry that has not been segmented out. I've been feeling this more and more. So I work with so many like independent artists. Like we work with some YouTubers and stuff, but mostly I'm like trying to find where are the artists that are really putting out something that feels.
Yeah.
It like puts something out that is intangible. And then I have our community vote which ones they like or not. But working with all these independent artists and then also being active in this NFT crypto space, we're at such an interesting crossroads between the actual creation, the creator being its own segment in a way that honestly hasn't been possible, because the few people that have managed to do it, either they're on YouTube, so that turned out to be a good place to have your creative form expressed. Outside of that, it's like you and me. So it's been e-commerce, which I love e-commerce. So it like ticks all of my obsessive continued educational boxes. So even with that, I'm kind of probably in a minority compared to a lot of these artists that I work with. And I'm really seeing do different models in this crypto space, but it's its own group that hasn't truly had its own industry. If I'm working with an artist, the most that they're able to manage is whatever sales Instagram kind of like lets their audience see.
Yeah.
And they're unaware of those statistics and things like that. So there hasn't been a clear path for artists in this Web 2.0. And it's really going to be so cool to see what happens over the next decade. I mean, if we're talking about like freedom and independence and building and creative expression, it's like there's so much going on now that just there was absolutely nothing when I first started.
Yeah, it's like a renaissance, a digital renaissance.
Yeah, with all of, it's not a utopia, it's a renaissance.
Yeah. Like I think utopias are a fool's errand, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting, even in these communities. So Shirtless Cash has largely been involved in like niche communities. And so even these communities that are popping up now, they have their own cultures, but they aren't even breaking, like they're still withholding what the potential is even within those. We're actually on Twitter is one of the more open places that you can collect followers and go viral. And that's largely where these communities exist. But in terms of like where else is your foothold, it's like Instagram, Facebook. So especially once we start coming up with new solutions that actually are attractive and have that zeitgeist factor, whatever that's going to be to them in the next forms of social, like that is going to be creative first. And I think originality first.
Yeah. What do you see in the future happening? Or if you want to spoil it, because I know like your mind tends to live in the future.
So sticking with e-commerce, I think that, so it's basically, in times of growth, things are very positive sum, and groups work together and they create opportunities with each other. And so now we've seen the point in which the total pie in which that can exist in terms of the internet. So Web 2, Facebook, Instagram, that the total market size is mostly known. So that then turns into a sort of grab of power, but really like it's defined. So it becomes more and more zero sum. And as things become zero sum, there's less and less opportunity for surprises, which could be like short with cash happening. And there's the actual environment that they create becomes something that they just want to be stable. And so being inside of that environment, you also are more zero sum in that Facebook now knows how many ads they can show. And then you have other players that are outside of e-commerce buying ads, like venture capital backed startups, and then other models that are more financially plausible. So financial services themselves, they will be able to outcompete the actual ad spends of the majority of companies. This is in every company, and companies that have really solid like knowledge and strategies for their funnels, you're going to be able to compete there. But people are, already seeing their costs increase in these environments. And so people, the entrepreneurs, the trendsetters, people who don't want to have as much of a ceiling on top of them, or they don't want to have their future so dependent on something that seems like it's going to be less.
You get whittled down.
Yeah. They'll be looking for the new frontiers. So for Elon Musk, that's going to space, baby. Yeah. But, this whole conversation of metaverse, this is a concept right now. And I won't go too far into that. I'm part of the multiverse. So I'm just sticking with that. I've been saying the multiverse since before metaverse. The metaverse is meta from reality. It's meta from, so if you think the world that we live in, this one's meta. So it's actually separate. I don't believe in that sort of separation. So my worldview, the environment that my companies are in, the thing that I'm championing will always be like a multiverse. I like this planet. I like the metaverse world and whatever they do, as long as that keeps doing cool things. But there are more and more frontiers for that. To sum that up, it's like, the other thing I just gave you is time release caffeine. So I've actually been working on that for, honestly, probably like a year and a half. But after COVID happened, I started taking it more seriously to dial it in. And now that's just waiting for test branding. I'm going to start A/B testing. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm stealing Red Bull's marketing strategy. I'm going to go to where I think a lot of remote people are north and things like Rainy Street. And the question is, can I get traffic from samples like Red Bull cans? That's way more lightweight, way less cost than a can, to a website. And if I can do that, then, that's a different way for me to drive traffic. And it's like a street team
a guerrilla
version.
Marketing.
And then it's also caffeine. So it's an addiction. And the one thing with that zero sum environment that I left out, it's like financial services, venture capital backed companies, startups, IPOs that can be unprofitable, and addictions.
Drugs.
At the end of the day, because you can already see it in the TV realm. And so I think we'll see more and more of that. The internet is a much larger playing field, but I will say it's discouraging how ineffective all these other places, social media networks and horizontal sort of companies have failed at their advertising offerings. Because I test everything you can imagine, at least like once a year, I would say. I just run tests. Most recently is Reddit, a little better results than the past, but they have made so many mistakes and it's a little disheartening. I don't want to go down that route. But the advertising online is quite limited, where people are willing to, while they're browsing, they're open to be surprised and buy something. And that's an actual attitude that you have with the website itself that isn't present everywhere. And so there's just other paths people can take, whether it's in real life, kind of like I'm testing with that, but also like with our brand, I've been hanging out with like these people in the virtual realities. One thing with this digital, revolution is, let's say you're an e-commerce brand selling tables. How many tables can you sell in the physical realm? especially as we're trying to conserve more resources and just wealth distribution changes. How many tables can you sell in the real world? There will always be an audience for super nice handmade table, and you can have a great living off of that. But also, and alternatively, the number of tables that you're going to be able to sell in a digital realm when that table has social capital for having it in that environment is a number that is only for speculation. So one thing we can know right now is it's not going to be unlimited. Unlimited means no value. People actually don't value things that are unlimited. And then another aspect is, especially online and even in real life, like what social clout does this give me? Some items will have more than that. So that has your brand value attached to that. And also just the value itself of the table that you sell online. This is really like one direction these NFTs are heading in, where there's going to be a limited number of this collection. It's going to be way more fun than a table in real life, how it generates its properties, the exclusivity of like the design and the shape, the rarity of these things. These are happening. And also curious is you're going to start seeing this bleed back into the real world. So there's an interesting project I saw where basically it takes IKEA table sort of thing, where IKEA, you buy it, it's modular, you have to put it together yourself. And basically a collection where there's different rarities and different of just nuanced differences of the same collection, but between a mix of like novel engineering and how the smart contract does that final composition, it'll create a limited number of that collection. Some are more rare than others, and they'll just have minutely different aspects to them than are actually delivered into the real world. So you're already starting to see people kind of try and play with these things in both directions.
That's pretty cool. Where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, support you?
Yeah, so I've been getting active on Twitter. I'm starting to like Twitter. So Arden Lucas.
Okay. Well, how do you spell your full name?
ARDONLUKAS. And then, or Shirt Was Cash. That might be a more interesting one. It's mostly NFT stuff at this point.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sweet, man. Well, I appreciate you coming by and sharing, your outlook on the world. I love hearing it. It always gets my mind like churning into the future, especially that last part about, blending of really NFTs and products. It kind of giving me some ideas of what we could do at Beard Brand. But yeah, I hope our listeners enjoyed it as much as I did. This has been another e-commerce Conversations. Cheers. Keep on growing.